Okay, so next video here, we're going to start with Brant and sort of watch this through. So I think I'm not really sure what you're going for here, because really I think everything from like this point on looks really good. Like the impact, the slide down's maybe a little slow, but then like the stumble back, I really like some of that. This walk toward it though, he's got this like weird like surge forward in the hips. So if you watch him, he like takes a step forward and then the hips stop moving for just a few frames, or at least they don't move at the same pace. And then surge forward, like there's like these little surges in the steps. Like they go forward, stop, forward, stop. And then he kind of jumps in there. The other thing is like this feels like a walk, where he tries to walk up the wall instead of like a run or a jog or anything. And so it almost feels like if you're going for like a little bit of a jog here, I think you need a little bit more of a like hopping almost. Like right now, it's both feet stay on the ground through the whole thing. I like some of the overlapping action you're getting in the feet here, though. Like that's pretty neat. And then I really like this stagger pose right there. Like I like that a lot. That really feels like that hurt, and he's backing away. So I think the other thing is if you're wanting it to feel like he was already moving before this started, you kind of ease in on those first few frames, and so it really needs to feel like he was already moving forward. Like probably one of the easiest ways to do this is to go into the negative frames and go ahead and animate a couple of other steps, and they don't have to be as clean, but you continue to have that move forward, and then you just render, like you sort of cut into the middle of that action when you start rendering, right? And so that would be my 2 cents on that. I think it's off to, well, it's not a good start. It's making good progress and has a good skeleton to it. I just think it still needs a little bit of polish on the curves. You got some overlapping action working pretty well though. And so yeah, just keep pushing that and just try to sort of clean up this issue with the forward progression. I guess there's also like a little bit of an issue in the like logic of it. Like, was he trying to jump up the wall, or did he not see the wall? And like, it just kind of looks like he's running into it for a gag, right? So if you're wanting it to look like he's trying to jump it, I think that's more in this pose here, and it doesn't really feel like he is. It just kind of feels like he kind of sort of is intentionally jumping against it and sliding down. So I think what you would need is some evidence that this jump was an in earnest attempt to get up the wall. And I think the best way to show that is to have him reaching a little bit more and having anticipate down just a little bit more right here, maybe even looking upward, right? That would be my 2 cents to kind of sell that a little more clearly. So Hannah. So my 2 cents, I don't know that I would even have that. Let me listen to the audio here. I don't know that I would have that first shot where we just see him for a minute. Oh, it's not playing the audio there. Let me try it on the...
No, Michael, no! Touch the handle. If it's hot, there could be a fire in the hallway. What does warm mean? Oh my gosh, not a viable option.
So I think I would consider trimming off this first little bit here, because you start it with like him there, we cut to this just for a second, and then he's back to here. I think I would just start with this guy. Now the other little thing is kind of more of a scene space issue. Like if you take this guy here, he's here, or I think I would move him over to like here, right? And he's looking off in this direction. You may also be able to cut in on him just a little tighter. So another option for this may be, here's his head, here's his chest, here's his, well, it's still feeling about the same. I'm just drawing them bigger on it. Basically, you cut in on him to where his camera looks more like this, right? But what we're doing is we're sort of doing that rule of thirds. But you have him on this line of the thirds, and you have him looking in this direction. So that's kind of what I would do with this shot. In terms of composition of this shot, the problem with it is the focal point is down here, and that's just not like we got all this area up here that just nothing's happening there. So I think I would get in here a little bit different on the framing of this, and maybe even raise the whole thing up to where this doorknob is maybe like here, he's maybe like here, kind of leaning in on it, right? And so that would be what I would consider. Then that lets you get rid of all of this that's not really being very useful. In terms of the animation, I feel like he's rotating from like here a lot. Like there's this arc that goes like here, but his hips aren't really doing a lot of moving. Like hip shifting, and kind of the same here. Like he rotates from this point, and we get this rotation, but we're not getting like any other rotation in here or any hip shifting in this direction. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing to direct. And then I think when he's moving, like when he's moving his arms here, you see like this is the rotation that you controlled, but it doesn't really feel like much of the rest of the arm is doing anything. So we just get this like this, right? And so instead, think of it as like, or I guess he's rotating it down, right? So as he rotates it down, maybe what you do is you break the elbow like this. You still keep him kind of pointing, right? And then little bits at a time, you sort of drag along behind that to where the hand kind of loosens up and sort of gets, you know, like drags along behind the thing. But like right now, I just feel like all that motion is coming just from the shoulder, and his arm is rotating in one axis. And really, your arm sort of breaks in multiple areas, or bends. I say breaks, but it bends in multiple areas. And we call that the successive breaking of joints. So I feel like you need a little bit more of that happening. You also have them all kind of hitting on the same pose here, but I know part of that is, part of that is that your character is, your pass on this was sort of the blocking plus pass, and so, or blocking plus. So I think you're probably polishing each of these a little bit more. But you know, like maybe the head looks up first, and then the hands, you know, sort of pull up to the chest after. So, yeah. Again, like this tap feels like it's all like sort of happening together. Like I would think that it would kind of lead with the arm, like the shoulder would sort of drag the elbow down, and then the hand would sort of tap it. And so I don't know. There's a lot of little things I think you could do in there to loosen that one up. Catherine. Yeah, I'm gonna kind of agree with people and say that like I think your smear frames are. I actually like them. I think that they're too solid. I think what you need is to like have more of this in them as they're moving, so you can see that background and break up some of these solid lines that are being made up out of that. And I think that's going to feel just a little bit less Yeah, they're gonna feel a little less noticeable. The other reason they're so noticeable is we got 1, 2, 3. Do I have it on there for 3? 2. Yeah, it may be that you're holding them on 2s. And so one of the things about smear frames is that a smear frame usually exists, like the one that nobody noticed or bothered was this one right here. Right. But this one you hold for 2 frames, and then this one, each of these you have 1 frame, 2 frame, right? And so the way to look at this is a smear frame exists because you don't have enough frames to show that action, right? Like my let's do a little sample animation here. My ball is, I gotta get a color you can see. My ball is here. We got 1 frame where nothing happens, and then the ball is over here. So the way we show that is a smear frame on this frame in between here, where the ball covers that whole spectrum, right? And so that's how we get that, is that I want to be able to show the ball in more than one place, but I only have 1 frame to show it, right? And so I think what's happening is when you're holding these on 2s, they're just reading a little too long and a little too solid. So I think you could also kind of, break this up so it's not one big solid color piece, and it'll work a little bit better. If you go back and kind of listen to the one I did for Parker, I think you're getting the same things too, where like everything hits right there, right? Donk. And I think what you need is 1 more frame where the head dips a little bit more before popping back up, and maybe the hips, or like you get like all of those 3 masses hitting at slightly different times. And I think if you can get that, it's gonna loosen this up dramatically. In the action parts, it's fine. It's how your character starts moving or comes to a stop. That's where it's feeling a little too sudden that it stops. And so just getting that overlapping action, maybe as he comes into this pose, that head just kind of drags by 1 frame and lands there. Or maybe the head drags by 2 frames, but the chest mass drags by 1. And so you get this easing in up this hierarchy. Overall, though, I really like what you got here. I think just pushing it a little bit more and cleaning up those smear frames, and you're going to have a pretty good piece. Ethan. Yeah, I think the biggest note you got in class that I kind of agree with is like your push-off poses here, your contacts. Like he hits that pose, but I don't really feel the energy behind it, right? He hits it, and then he kind of hesitates there for a few frames before he travels off there. So really, like, 1, this isn't the strongest push-off pose. I think it would lean him into it a little bit more, right? Like that. And 2, I think I think that the easing in there, like if that's this pose, then the very next frame is going to be the biggest spacing he travels. And right now, yours just barely comes off there. Like he really should be like traveling a big distance with that foot, right? And so it's really just getting that to getting those push-offs to feel a little stronger. There's some spots here where he kind of feels like he should have went tumbling off there at this point. And so like I think you're kind of hitting these poses, and then like the whole character is just drifting up to this. And I think it's all about like, if that's the pose you needed him in, maybe he should have landed like here and sort of drifted into that pose, instead before pushing off. Again, the contact pose here, I think you need to get that leg extended out to contact and getting like this, you know, and then so it's the contact poses that are missing, like it sort of eases into that, and so instead you need like before a ball hits the ground, it stretches, and then the very next one it squashes, and so like or the next few, right, you get that contrast between the two, and so I think you're not getting the weight on these impacts because of that. So it's just this blend into that's feeling like there's no weight in that. And so I think the last thing is sort of this like slow slide into that feels a little soft. So I think it needs to, like, it feels like he's not really, I think you're needing to break some tangents, and I think you're needing to really find those points where he contacts, like that's when all of the forces would change, right? So after that contact happens, how does he react to it? And so to me, he contacts there, but it takes several frames for him to react. And it's just making sure that you can kind of clarify that a little bit more. Okay. Jordan. So. Oh yeah, man. This one's looking pretty solid. I think you got a little bit of a small thing that happens right here, like with that hip. The hips kind of, they shift over a little bit and then surge forward, and I think I would ease them forward as he's taking that step, and then they kind of stop a little bit before it feels like he has a chance to slow them down with the front foot. So maybe those need to sort of delay that forward motion there a little bit earlier. And then I really like what you're getting there with that leaning forward and the way he jumps back. Like all of that looks good. The hat maybe should hit just a little harder. And then I think if you get just a little bobble on the flashlight when it hits the ground too. My thing right here, I think that this silhouette is muddy. So, I mean, I think you can start into that, like as he's lowering down here, but I think you need to like kind of extend this arm out, like he's like really trying to shine it up somewhere. And then again, I still feel like he needs like something to be shining it into. Maybe it's like a cave over here that we could see. And then like when he when the like whatever happens, like and he jumps back, I think that's a good reaction to it. My 2 cents, like the way he stands up here feels a little linear. So maybe you would start with his hips pulling up and his chest would drag behind, and then his head would kind of pull up. But the other thing is like I almost wonder if you should make the whatever the scary thing is that happen while he's still down here, and then when the trigger happens, he just pops all the way up to there and back to there. And so like if you are doing something with like a cavern or something like that he's looking into right here, then it could be like, you know, some bats fly out or something that really scare him. You got the whole cave sort of shake, but that's just something to mess around with. I actually really like the way the scene's looking too. So yeah, great work on that. All right, Amanda and Lisa, we already looked at yours, and Sarah. So that means we got Andrew and Courtney. So we'll Andrew, sorry, I'm gonna pull yours in here. Again, I know that some of the notes in 2D I think are going to be pretty similar, so like, check out each other's. So Andrew, I'd say check out Catherine's and Parker's too, because some of those notes may be helpful for you. I think right now the biggest thing is, I mean, I get the I get the idea of it being like a 2D game. but I think it's a little unclear on what parts of the animation are the sort of a gag about being a 2D game. Like the foot sliding here, is that like intentional to like sort of poke fun at the 2D game, or is it accidental? Like, I mean, I think it's intentional, but you don't want someone mistaking it for accidental and just thinking, you didn't know how to not do that. So, and you got so many little things in here too. Like, I love how he stops, looks forward, and then steps back. Like, all of that section right there looks good. I think my 2 cents is like with that and the jump, I would just treat this as a serious animation. Like, you're seriously addressing these things. Actually, let me just go ahead and email her. And so, but that would be my 2 cents, is just sort of pull this together, get in there a little closer to where we can see this a little better as well. And last one, Courtney. Oh yeah, I think this is actually looking really good. My 2 cents on it would be just kind of keep polishing on it. I feel like she needs a little bit more hip shifts when she shifts her weight. I like all the dog stuff. I feel like maybe you could use just a little bit more face detail, but this is a really strong piece. I'm really looking forward to seeing how. Like, I love that stuff, like this little overlapping action you're getting in there. So I think you're gonna be able to pull a good one together on this one. If I know you're gonna turn in this probably for the next project, but if you need me to sit down with you and look at some of this, like little ways to control this, but I think like right here is like the big idea I think you need to go for is like while she sort of anticipates over here, shift her weight that way, and then as she comes over here, you shift it this way, and make it feel like that mass is kind of what's really at the root of that whole gesture. And I think that's sort of the thing I would look at through all of these. Like when she's making these gestures, when she does this turn, it feels the other way around. It feels like it's the chest and the head that's at the source of it, and then her hips sort of follow along behind it. But I really like some of the gestures you're getting here with this. So, yeah. And then I like the sort of the contrast of sort of the simplified dog animation. I would almost consider reducing some of the dog motion just a little bit, and just limiting it to some of these bigger, like those motions. Like I really like that. Maybe have a little bit less of this drifty stuff happening early on, because then it would just look like he's kind of like staring at him or staring at her. And I think you can make it really, really subtle, small movements. Okay, cool. Well, I am going to go ahead and hit stop on this and upload the videos, and the grades will follow shortly. Thanks.